What happens when the person who promised to protect your heart becomes the person deciding who you're allowed to love? Because that is the terrifying new question hanging over Katie Spencer and Brooke Logan, two sisters who have survived scandals, betrayals, heartbreak, and the kind of family chaos most people would never recover from are suddenly facing something even colder than another argument. They may be facing exile from each other, not because they stopped being sisters, not because the pain vanished, but because Bill Spencer and Ridge Forrester appear ready to turn a family wound into a full-scale war. And the most unsettling part is this. Katie and Brooke may still believe there's time to soften, apologize, explain, maybe even forgive, but their husbands may already be past forgiveness. They may be preparing ultimatums that don't sound like love at all. They sound like ownership. You're watching Buzz Delight. I'm Adam, and if you can already feel how explosive this is getting, hit like. Share this with someone who lives for B&B drama. And subscribe, because this story is not just about two sisters fighting. It's about what happens when powerful men weaponize pain, when loyalty becomes a prison, and when a family feud grows so large that even love starts looking like betrayal. At first glance, Katie and Brooke's latest conflict looks like familiar Logan territory. A painful office shakeup, hurt pride, old insecurities, a sister feeling replaced. Another sister trying to hold her position inside the Forrester world. But underneath that polished fashion house drama is something much more dangerous. This is not really about one job. It is about identity. It is about who gets seen, who gets chosen, and who gets quietly pushed aside while everyone pretends it's just business. Katie Spencer's heartbreak did not begin the moment Brooke stepped into her place. It began in the silence that followed. That silence told Katie something brutal. It told her that the Forresters could move her out of the frame and keep going. It told her that her value could be discussed, adjusted, and replaced in rooms where she was supposed to matter. And when the woman stepping into that space was her own sister, the humiliation cut deeper than any corporate decision ever could. Because betrayal from a stranger bruises the ego. Betrayal from family rearranges your sense of reality. Brooke Logan, meanwhile, is not simply a villain in Katie's story. That would be too easy. And the bold and the beautiful rarely lets pain stay that simple. Brooke has spent much of her life fighting to remain central in a world that constantly judges her, desires her, resents her, and uses her. To Brooke, taking up space at Forrester may not feel like stealing from Katie. It may feel like survival, like proof that she still belongs, like proof that no matter how messy life becomes, she can still stand inside that glamorous empire and matter. But that is exactly why the wound is so hard to close. Katie sees eraser. Brooke sees validation. Katie feels discarded. Brooke feels threatened. And between those two emotional truths sits a family legacy so tangled that any apology would have to carry years of history on its back. Then Bill Spencer enters the story and everything changes. Bill does not respond to Katie's pain with a simple embrace and a quiet reassurance. That is not how Dollar Bill moves through the world. Bill sees pain as a signal. He sees humiliation as opportunity. If Katie has been cast aside by Forrester, then Bill can build her something bigger, louder, more defiant. On the surface, giving Katie her own fashion company feels romantic, almost heroic. It tells her she is not forgotten. It tells her she deserves power. It tells her he will not stand by while anyone makes his wife feel small. But Bill Spencer's grand gestures rarely come without consequences. Because when Bill gives Katie a company, he does more than heal a wound. He creates a battlefield. He takes a private sisterly fracture and wraps it in money, competition, pride, music, and revenge. Suddenly, Katie's pain is no longer just Katie's. It belongs to the Spencer name. It belongs to Bill's ego. It becomes a weapon aimed directly at the Forresters. And that is where Ridge Forrester comes in. Music, Ridge does not simply see a rival company. He sees an attack on his family's legacy. He sees Bill Spencer doing what Bill Spencer has always done best, storming into someone else's pain and turning it into leverage. To Ridge, this is not a husband supporting his wife. This is Dollar Bill using Katie as the emotional centerpiece of a business war. And once Ridge sees it that way, Brooke is no longer just Brooke. She becomes a potential security risk inside her own marriage. That is the cruel genius of this conflict. Katie and Brooke may have started the emotional fire, but Bill and Ridge are the ones building walls around it. And once men like Bill and Ridge start building walls, they rarely leave doors. Brooke may eventually soften. She may look at the wreckage and realize that losing Katie, losing peace with hope, losing access to the people who make her feel human is too high a price to pay for pride. Brooke has made mistakes, yes, but she is also someone who knows the ache of family separation. She knows what it means to love people who are furious with her. She knows that silence can become permanent if nobody is brave enough to break it. So, the natural instinct would be for Brooke to reach out, to make a call, to show up, to try to turn down the temperature before the damage becomes generational. But Ridge may not see that as healing. He may see it as betrayal. That is where this story becomes psychologically fascinating. Ridge's love for Brooke has always been intense, but intensity can easily disguise control when fear enters the room. If Ridge believes the Spencers are now enemies, then Brooke's connection to Katie, Hope, or anyone tied to that rival camp becomes more than family. It becomes a threat to Forrester's strategy. It becomes disloyalty dressed up as sisterhood. And if Ridge tells Brooke to stay away, he will likely frame it as protection, protection of their marriage, protection of the company, protection of the family. But beneath that polished Forrester language is a much sharper message. Choose us or choose them. That is not a request. That is a cage. Across town, Katie may be facing the same trap from a very different man. Bill Spencer knows how to speak to Katie's deepest injuries. He knows where the scars are. He knows she has felt overshadowed, underestimated, and betrayed before. And if he warns her to steer clear of her sisters, he may not sound cruel. He may sound devoted. He may remind her that they turned away when she needed them. He may remind her that he was the one who stood beside her. He may say he is the only person who truly saw her pain and acted on it. That kind of manipulation is dangerous because it arrives wearing the face of loyalty. Bill does not have to shout to isolate Katie. He only has to make reconciliation feel like self-betrayal. He only has to convince her that forgiveness would mean crawling back to the people who wounded her. And the more Katie believes Bill's version of events, the less she notices that the company meant to liberate her may also be binding her tighter to his agenda. That is the emotional trap at the center of this entire storyline. Katie and Brooke think they are fighting each other, but the real power struggle may be happening around them. Their husbands are not simply reacting to the feud. They are shaping it, feeding it, rebranding it as loyalty. And if neither sister is careful, they could wake up inside a war they no longer control. The tragedy is that Katie and Brooke's bond was never supposed to be this fragile. Logan's sisterhood has always been messy, passionate, music, infuriating, and strangely unbreakable. These women can wound each other in ways outsiders never could because they know each other's history. They know the childhood fears, the romantic disasters, the humiliations, the hopes. They know where to hit, but they also know how to hold. That is why this feud feels different. It is no longer just about anger. It is about access. Who gets access to Brooke? Who gets access to Katie? Who gets to define what forgiveness would mean? Once a husband starts deciding whether a wife can speak to her sister, the argument is no longer about the original injury. It is about control. And control is the one language Bill and Ridge both understand. They may despise each other, but in this moment, they are more alike than either would ever admit. Ridge wraps his dominance in legacy, taste, and family honor. Bill wraps his in loyalty, money, and brute force devotion. Ridge wants Brooke aligned with Forrester. Bill wants Katie protected under Spencer armor. One man speaks like a designer defending a dynasty. The other speaks like a king defending territory, but the emotional demand underneath is almost identical. Do not cross the line I drew for you. That is why the question of who issues the Logan ultimatum first may almost be less important than the fact that both men are capable of it. Ridge could forbid Brooke from reaching across enemy lines because he believes the future of Forrester is at stake. Bill could warn Katie away from Brooke because he believes betrayal deserves punishment. Both men could convince themselves they are doing the right thing. Both could call it love, but love that requires isolation is never just love. And while Katie and Brooke are trapped inside this emotional chess match, another danger is quietly moving through the Spencer world. While Spencer is being pulled into his own storm, one that looks very different from his parents' polished war, but maybe just as dangerous. He is being encouraged to move on from Elektra, to let go, to accept that heartbreak does not have to be the end of his story.